West Ham's Lopetegui era didn't get off to the climactic start planned with a 2-1 loss to Aston Villa in game week 1 of the new Premier League season. The Spaniards' side did rack up promising XG numbers and just about edged possession. In fact, when running the game through Danny Page's XG simulator and combining multiple shots from one chance together, the simulation suggested West Ham would win this game 48.59% of the time. But that doesn't tell the full story of the match. Despite that promising looking data, which is a big positive for a side just getting used to one another and a new way of playing, the game often leaned in Villa's favour, with Emery's team feeling as though they had control over long stretches of the match. Why? That's the question we're going to try to answer today. First of all, no new manager would want to get off to the start that West Ham did in this one, with Amadou Onana crashing in a free header from a few yards out after the zonal markers, blockers and goalkeeper all failed to do their jobs, and set-piece defence completely disintegrated after just 208 seconds. This was actually quite a neat move from Villa set-piece coach Austin McPhee, and West Ham will need to learn quickly from this experience, with zonal markers sticking to their task and staying in their zones. But the lead up to this corner is perhaps more interesting as an exploration of that slight perilousness that pervaded a lot of this West Ham performance. As we explored in our pre-match pack and preview podcast, something you can get access to every week ahead of the match over on Patreon, first week free, Emery has some interesting in-possession tactics and an approach that brings the best out of the profiles he has at his disposal. His side lines up in a 4-4-2 shape defensively, but when Villa have the ball, this quickly becomes a lopsided 4-2-2. That sees the right-sided forward drop off into a number 10 position and the left winger move into the same slot on the opposite side. As they build through into the middle third, we can then see the left back and right winger advance, with the defenders shuffling across to create that 3-box-3 we see so commonly in the Premier League. This staggered set of movements asks questions that a 3-box-3 from the start doesn't quite manage to, and we saw that at the weekend as Vladimir Coufal was tasked with following John McGinn, Villa's left midfielder in this game and resultant left half space operator, wherever he went. This contrasted with the pre-season friendly against Oliver Glasner's Crystal Palace, another 3-box-3 side, where Coufal followed the leftmost player in the attack, Tyrick Mitchell. Compare these teams' attacking fives side by side, and you can see the discrepancy in approach generated by Emery's more heavily rotational build-up. Instead of the defenders sliding across like they did against Palace with the left midfielder, fortunately Emerson, a fullback himself, dropping in to ensure numerical balance, Lopetegui stuck with his 4 against Villa, leaving the leftmost player, Lucas Digne, completely open. And this is what we saw in the build-up to that first goal, as Villa built from that 4-2-2 shape, with Coufal following McGinn all the way in. As Emery's side then stabilised in the middle third, the shape adapted into the 3-box-3, but Lopetegui's marking system did not, and Coufal stuck to his task, allowing Pau Torres to find Digne free on the outside and gifting Villa a cheap early corner. This persisted throughout much of the first half, with Villa able to repeatedly find Digne free and advance into the final third, while Coufal was drawn narrow by the movement of McGinn, until Lopetegui reverted back to what we saw in that Palace pre-season friendly, with a winger dropping to wing-back and the midfield reforming into a 5-4-1. The unlucky victim this time? Jarrod Bowen, whose heat map looked like this in the first 30 and then like this afterwards. Something else that we noticed leading to less control than Lopetegui would have liked was a level of midfield decompaction not conducive to retaining control and momentum through successful patient circulation and following counter-pressing in transition. What the hell does that mean? When the ball is turned over, we want our midfield to be nice and compact with close distances between teammates, enabling them to converge around the ball to try to win it back quickly and stay on the attack. This is something Villa were able to do throughout the match, as Tielemans and Onana converged around Antonio to win the ball back, or the same later in the match with multiple players close enough together to effectively form a box around him and force him to give up possession. And then when we have it, we want to be able to patiently move it around, waiting for an opening to then push through and exploit. With Villa's 3-2 base in possession, there's always an option to pass to, and as the double pivot drag opposition markers inwards, the flanks are easily accessible should they need to release some pressure. Whereas with West Ham, we see the same intent to overload with the front 5, but less effective stretching of the pitch and fewer connective options in the middle. This left huge pressure on Paqueta to produce, making him a clear target for Villa's midfielders and forcing an awkward level of directness. This could be seen with West Ham logging an 11.68% share of long passes compared to Villa's 8.6%. And with Rodriguez dropping alongside the centre-backs, Paqueta dropping deep to get on the ball, and Souček advancing to the front line, there were huge gaps between the midfielders that made that counter-pressure impossible, easily allowing Villa opportunities to transition to attack safely and quickly. This was only Lopetegui's first competitive match in charge at West Ham, and there were still big positives in the number of good chances created, but there were also big lessons to learn and many things to improve on that they should be able to implement this weekend against Glasner's Palace, another 3-box-3 side. As I mentioned earlier, we'll be going into exactly how we think West Ham can do that this weekend in the pre-match pack and the preview pod, things you can only access on our Patreon, which you can look at now, first 7 days free.